Hi everybody, it's Cindy with Candles and Supplies, and today I am super excited to show you how to make these awesome flower candles. So they're very popular right now, easy to make too. You don't see these mass produced, so you're not going to be competing with any of the big box stores that have these. These are going to be your unique creations at craft shows or wherever you decide to sell them to. Very popular this time of year for spring because we have Easter and we have Mother's Day coming up. People are thinking flowers. We're all sick of snow and winter too, so we're all thinking flowers. So popular this time of year, but they kind of carry you through too based on, what type of flowers you're going to make. Flowers bloom different every season, so we have, tulips and daffodils and, peonies and poppies and roses and all different ones that bloom. Sunflowers. So it can kind of carry you through the seasons too if you're selling these candles. So in front here, I have a few of them that we made. It's real fun to get creative and come up with different things. And they're just very simple, very elegant, very eye appealing too, depending on the jars that you pick and stuff like that. These Laconic jars, I really like them. It kind of gives a terrarium effect to the candle, which is kind of cool. The other ones, tumblers, the 10-ounce tumblers are always a popular item. So we put them in those. They fit in Apothecary jars. They fit in like the 17-ounce jars, and you can use 1 wick or 2 wicks, whatever you choose. They all get made the same way. I'm going to show you how to make these. What I like starting with first, the equipment that you'll need some molds to make different flowers. You will need wax and dye. The wax that I use to make the flowers is a harder wax. You don't want to use your container wax because they're detailed and it'll break when you come out of the mold. If you see all the petals on the flowers and stuff like that, they're very detailed. So if you use your container wax, which is softer, it's going to break. So I typically pick a Votive and pillar wax, which has a melt point of 130 to 145. Some of the flowers that are really detailed, like the peony, you want to make sure you go with a higher melt point because you want that wax to be harder. You don't want the petals to break off. This rose here, our single rose, is very thick, so you can use soy pillar blend, that type of thing, but the soy does not work well with something super detailed like the rose or the chrysanthemum. I like paraffin for those. And we'll give a list of wax recommendations down below in the comments too. That way you know what we use for what. So you need your flower molds, you need your color and scent to go with them. And you can kind of, keep your mind open. You don't have to use, if you're making a chrysanthemum and you can't find a chrysanthemum scent, use wildflowers, use positive mindset, inner peace, nice kind of floral things to inspire. Candles that have feel-good moods sell the best. Anything that makes people feel good, and changes their environment usually sells well. So you can really change these up to make them your own. I like to start with a very big flower arsenal. So I'll get my flower molds, I'll set them all out, and then I'll pour purple wax into all of them. Or I'll pour white wax into all of them, or I'll pour pink wax. And that way I have a lot of the same colors and stuff, but different flowers. And that gives me a lot of choices when I'm deciding what I want to do for my candles and stuff. You can scent them if you want to. You don't have to scent them. You're going to have the scent from the candle underneath. A lot of times you won't even notice that. But if you have a few key floral scents for what you're doing, then you can scent the bottom of it, and it usually scents the flower up the top. To melt the wax, I have a few different ways. So I like a griddle with the small melting pots, just because a lot of these flowers you pour into the molds and you can pop them out really quick, usually, 15-20 minutes. Some of them take a couple hours if they're a bigger one. This lotus takes, a few hours to do. But, these daisies, they pop out literally in 10 minutes. So if you keep a griddle with different colors of wax on there, you can just keep pouring them. And it goes very fast. The hibiscus goes very fast too. So I'll build an arsenal of flowers. And then for my containers, I have container wax melting over here in bulk, because you would just pour them separately. But my container wax is melting while I'm doing all this, and come up with ideas in your mind of what you want to do. So first thing we'll do is make the flowers. So we're going to pour into this chrysanthemum mold. And you see this has a lot of detail in here. I'm using a difficult one because why not? The easy ones are easy. You always want to make sure to spray your molds with mold release spray. I like this one. We sell this. I'll put a link in the details. Not that you can't use anything else, but this is what I've really found that won't screw up the finish on your candle. We use it ourselves here to pour all of our embeds. If there was a less expensive option, believe me, we would use it. Since this mold has so much detail, so you can see all the nooks and crannies, and you can see how many petals, how much detail it has on it and everything. So for this, with a lot of detail, you want to really make sure you generously spray the mold. open this. I actually kind of try to turn this one inside out just so I can get more of the nooks and crannies. Other molds you can just spray, but like these, you want to spray generously. So like this little daisy one, just give that a spray on the outside. That way it releases the wax from it nicely. Okay, molds are sprayed, so we are ready to pour. These little daisies are interested. We're actually going to do these in multiple colors. One color kind of for this mold kind of looks like this, but multiple colors you can put, but it has like a little bit of brown on the inside. That's the stamen of the flower. So we're going to pour these in 2 steps. First, on this little mold, we'll do the little brown parts. So I already have my brown wax made up. I used mocha for the inside because that's a very good color for that. I use a little dropper, just a little glass eyedropper. Drop little bits in here just to kind of fill that area where it would go. Set. And then if you have ones, so this mold, I believe it's a zinnia, it's a little more concave, so you can't pour the brown first, you have to do that after. So for those, I'll pour the little wax flower and then I'll just drop the brown in afterwards to make the center. Works too. Spread it out. You don't get the bumpy detail of the mold, but it still looks good. People guarantee you won't notice. Okay. And these are just little glass eyedroppers, so that's what I do. Any little pipettes will work too. I like the glass because you can heat it up so the wax doesn't clog it. Okay, so this mold is ready to pour. When I was researching for this and stuff like that, I like to Google the flower and get all different color ideas and everything too to make them look as realistic as possible. So you can just Google images of the flower type. Okay, and then for the chrysanthemum, we're just going to pour the wax in. I like going a little hotter because you want your wax to be thinner. The wax is thin when it's hot. So I like pouring into the molds at about 200 degrees, just so the wax is nice and thin and it spreads out in all that detail. So that's filled. There's 2 different ways. You'll need a hole for the wick for when you make your candles. There's 2 different ways you can do that. One way is just to pour your wax into the mold like we did, let it sit and let it get hard, and that's how this peony is here. The other way, you can pour the wax into the mold, and then when the wax is set up but not yet hard, just insert a wick pin. And what that'll do is create a hole through the center of your candle so that when it's done, you pull the wick pin out, you pull the wax flower out, and you have a wick hole that's already made in there. So that does that nicely, but then I found, it was nice if you're only planning on doing 1 wick. This is like a 1 wick type of flower. But on the wider ones, like the peonies and the roses, a lot of times I wanted to do these wider 17-ounce jars and use 2 wicks. So it doesn't really work that way if you want to do 2 wicks because you don't know how far. It's easier to drill them in the end. So the second way to make a hole is just to get a drill, plain old power drill with a 1/8 inch drill bit, and you can drill the wax piece after it's made. So, and we are going to do that right now with this peony. I picked the most delicate one so that if it gets screwed up, you won't feel bad at home because I just did it on camera. All right, so this is a peony. I made it a cool peach color. This has a lot of detail on it. I did spray the mold very generously and stuff like that, but this has a lot of detail on it. So sometimes those little wax pieces crack off. It's important when you're doing these to demold very slowly. I kind of pull the edges away very slowly. Just kind of release the airlock, release the wax from the mold. Just pull it as slowly as you can. It's not as fragile when you're handling it as when it's stuck in the mold here. So just keep going around and pull it as slow as you can away. And then after you get those out, you can kind of turn the molds are very flexible, so you can kind of turn it inside out. And just kind of gently release the peony from the top. Hopefully, don't break a thing. Came out perfectly. So that is beautiful. And that's how you do that. So depending on what type of jar I wanted to put this in, if I was putting it in, it won't fit in the Apothecary. So you have to kind of try these on for size. If we try to put it in there, it's not going to fit. It won't fit in here. The only one that this one fits in is our 17 ounce. So it'll probably be a 1 wick or a 2 wick. but I'll leave that aside. We'll do that later. This one, the rose, I did the wick pin method. Again, we just release the wick pin, pull it away from the molds gently. This one's a bit more forgiving. It's a bigger mold, and then pull it out of the mold to reveal your flower. If you get a nice arsenal of nice collection of flowers, you can just keep them aside and then make them up as you need them. So that's how to make those. So next, we're going to go on to making the bottom part of the candle. So probably the most important thing you have to watch out for in this is you have to take into consideration the size of your flower when you're pouring it into the jar. So you don't want to pour, typically you would pour your candle all the way up here, but then you'd have the flower sitting out of the top. If you want that effect, that's great, you'll have that. But you have to take into consideration that the flower is going to probably take up that much of the candle. So I'm only going to pour this like halfway full. So if I size it up for the flower right there, I know I have to pour about halfway. You can also get some type of, people use, I use like paper clips when you want to figure out where you want to pour to. You can put a paper clip over the side of your jar and it gives you a pouring guide too. So you know if the paper clip's there, you just want to pour to the bottom of the paper clip. And then if you're pouring multiple candles, you can keep going that down. I know there's like a very expensive tool for doing that, but I believe in cheap, so we use paper clips here. So you can put a paper clip for your pouring guide. Okay. And first thing I always do when I make a container candle, I turn it over, I put the burn label on the bottom. You always need the burn label. You always want to have them on the bottom. If you make your candle, you're going to be looking at the flower and how beautiful it is and the jar adhesion and stuff. You're never going to turn the candle over, the jar over, to see if you have the burn label on. So just do that first and you'll never forget. Second, we'll put the wick in. I use a straw, just a plain drinking straw. I put the pre-tab wick in. For these candles, I do like using a cord wick. I'm using a zinc cord wick today. Any type of paper core and ultra core, any type of cord wick works better because when you're threading the flower over top of the wick, it's nice to have that backbone of the core in there. So it just kind of holds it into place better. And then I'll put a piece of wick tape on. And use super extra tacky. And be careful not to stick it to my fingers or they'll be stuck there forever. And by using a straw, you can just kind of pinch the wick. You want to keep the wick nice and straight in your jar always. Just eyeball it in the bottom, push it in there. They work better with pressure. So you should be able to lift your jar. Like that. Nice and pressure. Okay. And then so the wick is stabilized at the bottom. We're going to put the wick bar over top of this. Just kind of stabilize it at the top. I also like creasing the wick, like right around the wick bar, just because that'll hold it in place. So the wick is going to relax when you pour the wax in there. You don't want to relax and make an S shape. You want it to be nice and straight so you can pour it straight. Okay, that vessel is ready. So next thing that we'll do is put our wax in here. So I get my pouring pitcher. Everything goes by weight. I know this jar holds about 8 ounces of wax. We know we want to pour halfway up, so I'm only going to make 4 ounces in here. So I'm going to weigh out enough to make a 4-ounce batch. So I know this wax will hold about 6%. 6% fragrance in there. I'm going to leave it white too. I want the bottom to be white. You can color it. So on these, I did like dirt on the bottom and then green and then the flower to kind of look like the whole earthy flower entourage. But this one I'm just going to leave white. I like how elegant it is with the white on the bottom and then the colored flower on the top. So we'll leave that in there. And then I will go over here and tap out some wax. And I'm only going to add enough to make 4 ounces because that's what we're going for in this jar. It's just 4 ounces. Okay. Give that a stir just to mix the fragrance in there. And then we will gently pour into the jar. Since we are leaving that jar halfway empty, we're going to make sure that you don't pour on the side of the jar, otherwise you have some cleanup to do. Kind of a pain cleaning up the jar before you have to. I do it, but it's better if you can just pour right down by the wick and not have to worry about it. So, okay. So that is poured in there. I like the level because when we put the flower in, there'll be enough room for a wick and everything. Beautiful level. We'll just let that cool. And due to the amazing advancements of the internet and cameras, our candles have cooled over here. So we're going to work on putting the flower in there. So I have a bunch of pre-made candles, pre-made bases. I colored some of them because I thought it would be kind of cool. And then I left some of them white because I thought that would be cool too. And I have our flowers made because I have a nice flower arsenal. Can never have enough. So there's 3 different, well, more than 3 different, you can do many different types. But for this one, this is a nice wide open jar. We use the scent called Inner Peace. We want this to be a fun kind of uplifting candle. That's the goal for this. So I did yellow wax, Inner Peace scent, and then I have these fun little flowers, just as like flower scatters on the top. So botanical candles are very popular. A lot of people are using, you know, it was intended just to use petals in the botanicals, but now everybody's using like big pine cones and big flowers that are fire hazards and stuff. So this is one way of making floral candles without having your candles be a fire hazard too. You don't need the fire chief knocking on your door. So, or somebody that had your candle and caught it on fire. So these are waxed. They will burn down in there and melt down in there. So we want to get these on the top. So this candle is completely cooled. I poured this a couple days ago. It's completely cooled. So what I'm going to do is use a heat gun. Get my scale out of the way because that doesn't like lots of heat. I'm just going to use a little heat gun just to kind of melt the wax on the top so that the flowers will stick in there. If we just put the flowers in now, they're going to dump out. So just going to melt the top. Just give it a little heat. You don't want it to like release too far from the side of the jar. You want to be careful not to heat the wick up either. And then you just put your flowers in place wherever you want them. And they should stick right on there. I'm just randomly scattering these so where they look like a cute accent in there. Like just give it a little press too. And after that's in, you trim your wick. The candle is ready to go. It's very cute, very, very friendly. And by having the flowers on top and the sides like that, there's plenty of room for labeling. So you can still put your label on there without interfering in the look of the candle. Okay, now we get a little more difficult. We have this candle with this lotus. So this is a big, thick lotus flower. I did not put a wick hole, so we're going to drill a wick hole in here. You can drill from the bottom or you can drill from the top. I kind of like going in from the top because that way you know your wick's in the center. If you go in from the bottom, sometimes it comes out surprisingly. Now this flower might be bigger than this flower is bigger than my drill bit too, so we're going to hope for the best. When you do this, if you're using a real brittle wax, I would recommend just heating the drill bit a bit with the heat gun. This is our 1285, so it's half paraffin, half soy wax, so it's a little more, it's not quite as brittle, it's a little more flexible. So I'm feeling comfortable about not heating the bit up and just going regular with it. You want to go slow. Don't try to rush this or it'll break. So I'm just going to go in the center, nice and slow. And as deep as it'll go. And once the drill bit, it does make a little bit of sediment on the top. Just get that off. And now we're going to have to, since this is deep, you can use a longer drill bit, that would be nice, but we're going to have to kind of guess where this is. So this should be fun. Guessed good. So I tried to keep it in the center, so I just picked the center of the bottom and the holes met up. So now that this is the wick hole's drilled through, I want to take the heat gun again, just warm this up a little bit. That way when I put the flower on, it'll stick. This would be kind of cool too if you're selling at a craft show. If you had just a bunch of flowers ready to go and a bunch of candles, people could put their own candles together too. Something to do. So that wax is heated up. Make sure the top is clean here. And we're just going to slide the wick through the hole that we just made by drilling it. Right on top of there. And set that in the jar. candle's ready to go. It looks really cute with the purple and the green. I like it. That one is ready to go. Okay. Our poppy flower. So this one presents its own challenge because this is a very, very delicate one. So again, this mold, I would only recommend using like a harder paraffin. That way the petals don't break off. It does not work with soy wax. It does not work with the soy blend. It just works with like a super hard paraffin. So I'm just gonna, and it's kind of, the middle of this is kind of, it points. So it's gonna, it'll be hard to find the center just with the drill bit. So I'm gonna do this one from the bottom. Candles always sink from the bottom in the middle. So we're gonna use that to our advantage. I'm gonna hold this, try not to drill myself. So nice and slow, hopefully I won't break it. Went through and made a nice wick hole in the middle. Clean that off. Turn that over. Again, we'll give this a little heat. Just a little bit, you don't need much. Put that in there. So this one, since it's higher, we could theoretically actually pour another layer of wax to look at more, to make it look more like it's planted, but I like this look of it sticking up, so I think it's fun. Okay. Trim the wick on this one too. This one's a little harder. And that one's ready to go. Okay, now for the challenge. Now we have 2 wicks, and we have put them in the jar, 2 wicks. So it's important that you get the holes drilled exactly where you're going to need them to be. So what I do is just take my wick bar, I take regular wick bars and I drill extra holes in them. I'm going to put this on the bottom of the flower here. And I know the 2 wick holes that I used for my wicks, so I'm just going to put that on the bottom and use it kind of as a jig to drill my hole, just to make marks. Oops. Mark there. Excellent. Trying to hold it and not break it. And I'll just make a little mark here. If you just mark where the holes need to be, that way you can take the wick bar off, get it out of your way, and drill the holes for real. One through there. And since we use the wick bar as a guide, this should match up nicely. So this is when a cord wick comes in nicely. I did not use a cord wick on here. And hopefully you keep them nice and straight and not bent, otherwise they are a little bit challenging. So again, we're going to thread both wicks through the wick holes. And they're going to come up. I did not heat this jar. I could still do that if I want. I can pull this off, only because I forgot, not because it doesn't need it, but I just forgot. Maybe I'll want to change this color later on. I don't know, but here's the candle with 2 wicks in it. And that's how to do these, as simple as that. So it's all the same basic candle making equipment that you already had: color, scent, wax, heat source, containers, that type of thing. Most of it's your imagination, what you decide to do with your flowers. But it's super fun to make different creations and stuff. So I hope you like this. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe down below for more videos and anything fun that we do here. So thanks for watching today, and we'll see you next time.